selectmen, though.
I still can't do it yet.
I bet you they'd like to pull it on you, though.
Oh, yeah.
The other morning, I saw a vehicle stop at the Legion before the road there. First cloud out of my head coming. Take that and wait till
Call to order the special meeting for City of East Grand Forks, Tuesday, October 10th, 2017. It's now 5 o'clock. City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor C. Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olson.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council members Clarence Better.
Here.
Mike Pakshavinsky.
Here.
Tim Riepel.
Here.
Henry Tweeden.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Does turn in quorum. Number one, consider adopting resolution 17-10-71, filing the assessment rule and setting the final public hearing for 2017. Assessment job number one, street improvements for Monday, October 30th, 2017. Moved by Tweeten.
Second.
Second by Grassel. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none. Roll call.
Copy of the assessment rule if anybody wants to see it. Final assessment cost could come in quite a bit more than our preliminary improvement numbers, so I think overall everyone should be happy.
Okay. Anything else? If not, roll call, please.
Pakshavinsky.
Yes.
Riepel.
Yes.
Tweeden.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Grassel.
Yes.
Demers.
Yes.
Better.
Motion is carried. Entertain a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Move.
Moved by Grassel, second by Pachavinsky. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Meeting is now adjourned. Call to order the council work session for City of East Grand Forks, Tuesday, October 17, 2017, is now 5:01. City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor C. Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olson.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council members Clarence Better.
Here.
Mike Pakshavinsky.
Here.
Tim Riepel.
Here.
Henry Tweeden.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Discussion on Clearview and development. Michelle.
I brought this, I should say, it's a number of public hearings that will be held at the Planning Commission on Thursday due to the fact that I will be missing next Tuesday and Judd as well for work commitments. I wanted to make sure that I gave you the opportunity to speak or ask questions to both myself and the developer. So I'll quickly go through a couple of the reports that I've presented, answer any questions, or we can have Judd speak, and then both of us will be available for questions. The first thing that I'd like to go over just briefly is that we adopted a land use plan back in 2015, looking for some commercial spots down on the south end. We're struggling to get commercial entities to locate on the south end due to the fact that most of the available openings are furthest south, unless we were to obtain a bridge or see some further expansion where we'll see, the car traffic volumes increase. Right now, we just don't have any commercial entities interested in it. And also based on the traffic conditions and concerns with access on and off of Bigland, we've received a couple of development requests, one being Roberton for twin homes, and now the second one from Mr. Staus to put up twin homes where we've located commercial. Due to those facts, and then I think we're still in the process of wanting to see development, and we want to see new homes and increases, we're recommending that we amend the land use plan to allow for low and medium density development in those areas, based on the fact that the traffic volumes from those are going to be fairly low. We don't see it impacting traffic in a negative way, so we think that would be a good recommendation, is to amend that plan. We still have some commercial in the plan on Reinhardt. We don't want to necessarily designate no commercial on the south end, but as we go moving forward, I still think we have some viable areas for that. The second report then is to rezone the properties. Currently, they're zoned urban expansion reserve. Not quite sure what those pieces were going to be at one point, so we leave them. That just means that it's reserved for some urban expansion. He's expecting to rezone both to a PUD, planned unit development, North of 13th would be single-family homes, south of 13th would be 2 twin home units, so a total of 4. The floodplain elevation on the south kind of takes away quite a bit of the development area as well as access, so we think that that would be a good fit for it. Another reason why people like to rezone PUD is because they can place their own types of requirements on it rather than covenants. PUD allows to place those requirements right on that PUD plan. The city will then enforce those, and if there were any chance of changing those requirements, then it would have to come back to the council for a PUD amendment. So it does become a little bit more restrictive, and it allows us to notify the residents nearby. PUDs I do like in that sense, so we can kind of state if there's anything we want right on that PUD plan, rather than a covenant which is enforced by the homeowners themselves. So that would be the next report. I'm recommending approve that we rezone both to PUD. Then we go right into the plats. The first plat that I included is the south half of 13th. And again, that is 4 units, 2 twin homes. It also shows the floodplain line. One thing about both plats, the north plat, and I can talk about that one, which is 5 single-family homes, 5 very large lots that will kind of have a swale and some berm-type development on it. Those are going to have not private utilities, but private streets, private sanitary sewer, and all, if I'm not mistaken, Judd, are going to be installed by you, the developer, correct? Maintenance for sanitary sewer, the streets, any of the service lines leading from the main water line will all be maintained by the residents, will be included in a homeowner's agreement or like a developer agreement between the individual homeowners. If you notice on the north end, the road does not run all the way through the property. I did this because with 5 lots, and if we connected the existing access on that north end piece on Bigland Road to 13th, I'm fearful that that will become kind of a drive-through. So if people drop off their kids, they'll turn right, get on, drive through the neighborhood, and get off on Bigland. And I don't think that's what we want, is a through street where people use it kind of as a cut across. Also, based on the size of the lots, it would be 5 lots taking on the cost of a street. So based on the access control that we have, it'll just be a hammerhead. At the top of that hammerhead on the north end, we will allow for garbage pickup and mailboxes. And then individual driveways will come off of that hammerhead.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I've never heard of the name Macomber before. Where'd that name come about?
The developer is the one that names it. So
What?
the developer named it.
Yeah,
We don't name the plats.
no, I know,
So-
but I've never heard that name before.
So,
And how many are you going to build this year?
So just based on the dirt that's moving right now, just for your information, you can move dirt without a plat. You can't move dirt without a SWIP plan and a stormwater permit. That would be Jason. But right now, he is doing, he's trying to put in some of the swales and figure out where he wants those to go. Therefore, the north end plat will be preliminary this month and final next month, so that we can make sure we get the utility easements and the fire hydrants kind of exactly where we want them. And I don't think you have any intentions of doing any development on that north end this year. So that way we can kind of get it right, so we don't plat it and then have to come back and make any amendments to it, which would again require another public hearing. So the one that we are going to recommend final would be the south End 1, the replat for the 4 twin homes. That, most of the utilities will be going in the current right-of-way. We don't need to obtain an easement on that. We will need to have the agreement because the sanitary sewer, again, will be private, and it will connect to the sanitary sewer on the north end. And so any sort of clean-out, maintenance, any work that would have to be done, removing the road, anything like that, we would want to make sure that the twin home people are aware that they will be responsible for fixing the road and bringing it back to where it was. Because it's private, it's their responsibility, and it won't be the city's responsibility to do the work within the right-of-way. So, trying to think if there's anything else I can think of. There is one question from the fire department in regards to putting a hydrant on the south end. By those units, I think we will need to add a fire hydrant because we will not want to have fire hydrants on the north side of 13th or across Bigland and have to run a hose across Bigland or 13th. We don't want to hinder traffic, so we'll have to put a fire hydrant down there.
Chad?
Just a question. You're stockpiling the clay to move, you're gonna move some of that, right?
Some of what we have.
When do you plan on moving that? Shortly?
Yeah.
I mean, I just noticed you have your water barrier, your barriers there, and it's open. Are you gonna come across 13?
That's the other access coming to the property, where it's open right there.
Okay.
On 13. So there's a 40-foot right away right there.
Okay.
So that's why it's like that.
Okay.
And when we do get, or if and when we do get approval to work over on the south side, that's where we would go, we just add our gravel and whatnot.
Okay.
Across over the other property.
Start at about 9 and quit at about 2:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's, I don't know if it's a true alley there, but a lot of those residents use it as an alley. Is that going to stay there, or is that going away?
That's a 20-foot easement. It says utility and access easement, so it's not going away. His access point will just lead off of that.
Okay.
So that's the only way we could do it because based on our current access control, there is no allowable access on Bigland because that's an existing access opening. He is coming off of that and then going on to his property. So
But the residents along, I don't even know James, but they would still have access to their backyards?
Yes.
Through there?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. PUDs, if you look at that, really just a concept plan again. Once we get through the plat process, then we approve the PUD concept plan. Our biggest concerns and the things that we will be focused on will be, in fact, those homeowner agreements, the agreements that get recorded with each individual lot. Those will become very key. We'll want to make sure that all of our city departments are allowed to review it, as well as our city attorney, and make sure that everything is included that I have included in the reports. The reason why is we want to make sure that, we dot our I's and cross our T's and remove a liability for ourselves and make sure that those things that are private are of the understanding that they will be taking care of maintaining and doing those types of things. And to lead up to that, because he would like to start doing work on the replat, we're hoping to do that as a final plat, get the developer's agreement approved, recorded with that, and the developer's agreement just is simply a document that states you will be installing all of the utilities and charging it back. They won't be special assessed.
Does that have to be recorded with the plat?
Yes. We have that.
Wait, do, yeah.
No, we have that document, so we will be providing that to you. The second document that will require of that South End one is, again, the agreement that I know you're working on with Gerard Neal. That one we will require to be recorded and included with each lot before we issue a building permit. So, because we want to make sure that that is taken care of before the building permits are issued.
One question on that, Nancy, with the twin home, in regards to before a building permit is issued, I don't know, Ron, has Gerard got a hold of you?
He called me, I've been in court, but I wanted to talk to Nancy because I haven't been involved in the discussions here, so I had no point of reference to talk to him.
Okay.
So he did call the office, I said I'd try to get back to him tomorrow.
And I just didn't know if, for instance, it took you guys X amount of days to come up with that agreement, if we can come up with some other sort of legal binding agreement, whereas, maybe we can get a building permit, but we can't, nobody can occupy the unit until this is resolved, or until it's agreed upon. Because I think we talked about with Nancy and all the different departments, I've agreed upon everything, so I don't foresee any issues, it's just getting the wording right, I suppose.
And-
You and your
And Judd has been more than willing to accommodate and easy to work with, so that is not an issue. My biggest concern is it seems to pop up, or before the sale of a lot that, I mean, people say I didn't know that, or after I bought it, then, all these new regulations came upon us. So I just want to make sure that we're upfront with what these people are responsible for before we get into the point, even before a certificate of occupancy, I would think maybe if we could set a deadline.
That's fine.
Yeah. I know he wants to get started before it gets winter, and that's understandable. I just want to be very clear that I'm not going to put the city in a position where we're having to follow up constantly and make sure that the homeowners are aware. Because it is a private development, it's going to be a private road, it's going to be private utilities, and so I shouldn't say private utilities. There will be some private utilities. So I want to make sure that they are aware that those are their responsibility before they in fact buy the property. So,
One thing, have you been in contact with the Water and Light Department relative to your development? We've got to have a master plan, and the reason I emphasize that is that undoubtedly be a shortage of wire plus transformers. And they probably will want to lay out a master plan for the whole piece of land. And I'd like to tell you something else. That's some of the best land in the state of Minnesota. I worked sugar beets there. Fitz Marshall was known as being the prior owner. Was regarded as being one of the best farmers there ever had. The soil is nice and thick black dirt that people are going to be able to have beautiful yards. And you have one advantage. You're across the Big Bend Highway. The children can go to two different schools without crossing the highway, so remember that.
Judd and his engineers have been at least at 2 utility meetings, plus a private development meeting that we had even before he attended utility meetings. So a number of departments have been working on this for over a month, except for Ron. I like to leave him for the end. So,
Mr. Demers.
To begin with, I guess to see development in those areas, the one particular in the south end is a tough spot to build because of the elevation. And that type of construction is maybe one of the 1 or 2 or maybe 3 possible applications there. The only question I have about that is, and I haven't done any of the measurements, but we do have in our transportation plan a roundabout program for that area. Wondering how that would fit going forward if and when we end up putting a roundabout there. Is there any setback issues, or are we?
based on lot 5, or is it lot 5, we should have more than enough area to fit in that roundabout. First of all, Big Glen Road has 150-foot right-of-way alone,
Good.
so that's quite a large one. We also have 80 feet on 13. I would think that we should be able to, based on the current constraints, to fit it in within the existing right-of-way.
And if there's a roundabout place there, would access management allow for, because that would potentially push that intersection further to the east. Now you're closer
You could
with
also-
your access to your,
You could also push it further to the south. Their access is off of 13th,
right, but
so,
you can't really push it to the south because that's where the intersection lines up. Right, you're talking about the roundabout you'd move to the
yes,
south?
you could move the roundabout to the south. You still have some space in there.
I think we should just double check, put a overlay on it, have engineering put an overlay on it, make sure that everything will fit and we meet access management. As far as the north end, so am I correct in, the north end has access on the, off of Bigland and off of 13th?
Yes.
So that will be a through street?
No. The access on the south off of 13th is only for the two.
Okay,
lots.
that's just for those
Yes.
two lots there.
Yeah.
So there will not be a through street. The other question I have, so do utilities, roads, that type of thing have to meet city spec?
We don't have anything specific to city spec other than we have to have a minimum road width of 20 feet for a fire truck, garbage truck, et cetera, to get through. That's based on prior code. It's also based on Minnesota standards. For a private drive, that's also why we put the T or the hammerhead so that we have the ability to turn around, get in and out. We require a paved surface for a road. We don't require curb and gutter on a private street. We don't require cement.
Okay, and I guess, and this is maybe a broader question than just this one, but we've done this type of development before at the old Crestwood site, where we've done private, completely enclosed. Everybody pays for their own stuff, and I had a conversation with the mayor, and I asked him to kind of refresh my memory because he was here through some of that, and you know, I recall having some pushback from the residents once they got in and sat back, you know, that this wasn't kind of what they thought, or why isn't the city taking care of this, or whatever. And I understand that it'll be put on into the PUD instructions or into the descriptions and details, but eventually it always comes back to the city as why is this the case, or why do we have these narrow roads, or why aren't you plowing it, why aren't you doing this, or whatever. And I mean, with 5 lots, maybe this isn't it isn't the end all be all, because word of mouth, most likely this will be where Crestwood was, I don't know how many units are there, 30, 40, I don't know. But the broader question I have is this the type of development we want? Because what I can foresee happening is this is going to be the new standard of how people are going to develop in East Grand Forks. You're going to buy a chunk of land, you're going to put in a, you know, thin bituminous road on not enough base to get by, get in, because we all know how we've been dealing with it for however long, how much it costs to put streets and all those type of things in. And I guess my point is that what we want? Do we want a bunch of HOAs in East Grand Forks? Because that's what this is, not yours specifically, but that's what the development pattern is going to be. You know, there's going to be people that, like I said, they're going to buy up a chunk of land, and they're going to do it all on their own spec, their own whatever. And like I said, I think it works for some things, like the POD, when you do an apartment complex. I think that makes sense, because I think that's what people expect when they move into a multi-unit dwelling. I think they expect parking lots. They have interconnecting roads that are blacktopped and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I think that the expectation, at least from East Grand Forks residents, has been that we're going to have good concrete roads, going to have good city utilities and that thing. So, like I said, it isn't anything about this yet, because I haven't seen exactly what is going to go in there, but that's my concern, is if that's the type of development that we want. And I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Emery.
One, I don't think this is going to set the standard for development in East Grand Forks. That's pretty high-end lots.
Steve, can you come up to the...
Come up here.
Again, what I was saying is, again, I don't think this development is going to set the standard for future development in East Grand Forks. I mean, these are high-end lots. We did make it clear to the engineering firm that Judd is working with that this road coming in off of Lakeland will have to be able to support a fire truck. So again, I don't think they're going to go in and put down 2 inches of asphalt and 4 inches of base. They're aware that they got to have the ability to support that fire truck. And then as far as utilities, again, we did do a looped system through the development. So that water system is located also within a utility easement. So the water main itself will stay public. Water and Light will maintain the water main system. The sanitary sewer system, they're basically looking at it putting in pressure systems within the homes. So about 99.9% of that sanitary sewer system will be private. There is one little stretch where they do kind of tie into the city sewer system. There's probably like 30 feet of sewer that will be public. Other than that, everything else is private. So,
Mayor?
Judd, were you recently involved in the apartment complex that went in new on the north end? That was you also? Because the word I've gotten from city staff is that you guys are good to work with. You come in, you understand what has to be done, you go out and you follow through and you do the thing as agreed, and then you come back maybe for additional follow-up or whatever it may be. So I guess I would just like to say thank you for that project, how smoothly it went, and also for your commitment to growing our community. Like all of us, and most of us in this room have been part of a project that we're trying to get done, and it feels like there are just these roadblocks, and yet it's part of a process to maybe even make your project better. If one of these folks has an idea from a planning standpoint that, well, let's probably take a look at that. You probably won't regret it when it's done. And I sense that you're the kind of developer that would receive that feedback and roll it in and go on back and do it that way. So thank you for the way that you conduct yourself and you bring out the best, I think, in our people also. Thanks.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything on this?
I just wanted to follow up quickly on Mr. Demers' comments. Just as a reminder, we do have a future roads map where we do line up future roads. We did not have any sort of access or future road agreement for these 2 corners of Bigland. So whether they weren't ever going to be a through street, they were going to be dead-ended into those properties. So I guess from that standpoint, I think it would be unique because we were never going to allow the through the property. That being said, yes, you do run a slippery slope of taking each one individually, but at the same time as the city, we're allowed to look at each development or each access individually. We still have future road classifications. We still have those maps. We still have the land use plan. I still try to follow. So that being said, it's completely up to you guys if you would want to see it cement, curb and gutter, if you have different ideas for that. The second item is based on the Crestwood homes and some of the complaints and things that I've dealt with. The major complaints were the water and sewer line, or water and electrical lines. A lot of the water complaints Dan and I had received over the course of the years because they were engineered and installed completely by the private developer. And the storm sewer pond or the stormwater pond was completely the most complaints because they didn't know who or what was maintaining. And that was an issue with the developer itself. I remember there was a lot of discussion with that. Based on this, we know that the city, in order to keep the type of permit that we have through the state, we have to be able to come in and maintain it, inspect it. Judd has agreed to allow us to access the stormwater management through the floodplain line, so anything in the elevation south where there would be no building, or under that elevation line of the floodplain, we would have the ability to access the property through that. That would be, again, in the agreement, so that we could go in every year. We could inspect it, if need be, do emergency maintenance on it, or send a letter to Judd requiring him to do those certain things. So based on what we've learned from the Crestwood one, we do not allow just stormwater systems or stormwater ponds to be completely private without having any control over that to some degree. So just to answer those two questions.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll move on.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add, information to bring to the Planning Commission?
Don't have anything.
No.
I know you guys do deal in, like pavement section widths, and if it's of a certain narrow section, you'll allow parking on no side, or on one side, or on both sides, and you guys have all those parameters figured out. I was on the Planning Commission for, I don't know, 6 or 8 years back in the day, so you'll work through that inside the PUD also, I'm sure.
If you go with a 24-foot, that allows for 2 lanes of travel, or a single fire truck, no parking. And I'm assuming that if they're roll-off curbs, that the people can park, on the individual property, which is what I'm guessing, because it'll only be people that would be there to see those individual people. And if it's their own private road, they can decide who and what parks on it. But we just wanted to make sure to get the Hammerhead back up and off of Bigland, because we didn't want to see mail on Bigland. We didn't want to see garbage cans on Bigland, or trying to do any of those types of pickups or things off of that. Plus, the driveways would get extremely long. It would be a little bit harder for fire. So we have a hydrant at the end of that, so they at least can get up to that point, and possibly then into the private drives if need be. So
The city can enforce no parking on the Hammerhead, even though it's a private road, privately built. City can enforce no parking.
yes, we can.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And
Thank
then
you, Judge.
I will be here until Monday at noon. So if anything happens between now and then, if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to give me a call. Send me any information by email. So thank you.
Thank you. Move on to number 2, request to overlay at Senior Center. Mr. Emery?
Thank you, Mr. President. In regards to Senior Center parking lot, when we first looked at this, we thought it would be a good idea when we had our paving contractor in town. We had a milling machine in town to basically go over there, just kind of mill off some asphalt and do an overlay. I think it was the evening before they were going to start that. We got a pretty good rainstorm, and I drove over there and just kind of seen some of the drainage issues that we had over there. And my concern was that by just kind of turning the contractor loose with the milling machine and then just putting down some asphalt, that we would not address the drainage issues over there. So the next morning I got together with Reed and kind of made the recommendation that, before we proceed with this and spend $65,000, $70,000, we really got to look at the drainage, and, maybe into the design we incorporate some, some drainage features, whether it's curb and gutter, valley gutters, maybe some storm sewer. But so with that, and then the other thing we had when we were over there that day, the gal that owns the hair cutting place kind of right in the alley too, she kind of came up and had concerns with drainage of the alley. I know Henry has talked to me about drainage in that alley. So again, going to be up to you guys, but I guess now would be the time if we want to address drainage in the alley. I think we could do that along with this project too. I think they kind of go hand in hand. So what Reed was really looking for tonight, and we had discussed, was just to kind of get authorization for us to prepare plans and specs, which would include our preliminary survey work and stuff. And that cost, I'm estimating around $6,500. And then again, up to you guys if you want to do any alley improvements at this time. My recommendation probably for that alley would be, as we all know, the parking lot's bituminous, but I think if we're gonna do anything in the alley there, I'd almost probably look at doing a concrete alley with kind of like an inverted crown to get the drainage out to the street. Don't have any costs for you at this point. Don't know how far we'd want to pave that alley. You know, do we go just to the north side of the senior center? Do we go to the north side of the senior center parking lot? You know, I guess that's all open for discussion too, so. And then the only other thing I was just kind of thinking that maybe we want to look at doing as part of the whole process too is maybe even getting a few borings in that parking lot. We've looked, Reed's looked, and no one's really got any records there of what's there for a pavement section, as far as how much asphalt, how much gravel base below it. It seems like right now the southern part of that parking lot, closer to the building, seems to hold up pretty well, except in the areas where the garbage truck comes through. He's putting big ruts in the pavement. But as you get down low, and I think part of it's just because of drainage and water standing there all the time, but that pavement is really deteriorated and stuff. So again, just thinking, you know, for $1,500, $2,000 just to do a little investigative work there so we know what we're getting into before, you know, we go ahead and get any big surprise during construction too. So I guess I'm open for any discussion.
Henry?
I had a discussion with Steve. I told him to take a look behind Franson Bank and Doc McDonald. There's 20-foot alley. It's a V shape, and it drains the whole thing. Now, the elevation may not fit there with what he's trying to do, but the thing is that you can get rid of the water that way, and I know in days gone by, people in the kitchen were always concerned of bringing mud into the kitchen when before there was any asphalt, even in the front. But I think if he takes and shoots the numbers on it, it'll give you direction. But if it's possible to do that, it'll look much, much better. And I'd suggest that everybody, when they leave here or sometime, take a look up behind Franson. Is that 20 feet wide?
I believe that's 20 feet wide, and yeah, that's that kind of inverted crown or whatever.
The thing is, that's an important part of the city. We want to enhance the appearance of it also. I mean, it's an entrance to Reinhardt Drive, which is a major area of development. But he should spend some time and come up with probably more than one plan. And but I agree with him. He's better off to study it a little more. Let's do it right, as we always try to do.
Did anybody have any questions?
No further questions.
Mr. Grasso?
I just have a couple things. I mean, I've dealt with the owner at Kay's Cut and Curl. I've been there a couple times when this first thing came about. But I think if we're going to do anything and we're going to fix that parking lot, I think it needs to be our responsibility to fix that alley. We can't just say, okay, we're going to fix the parking lot, because it's going to be, there's a mess back there when it's rained and it just lays back there because some people have built up the alleyway on the side, and she's got her flat concrete, so it's up and it just kind of bowls in there. So I think it needs to be, if you're going to shoot it, I don't know my next question is, where's the $6,500 going to come from?
Well, we were actually going to do overlays, so we're losing money for that.
Mayor?
How did you know?
Sounds.
I'm pretty sure if we're going to do the concrete, I was around when we did the stuff behind Franzen and behind to the high school along the football field there, and it turns into real money, the concrete part of it, and I think you might have to incorporate a catch basin here or there, maybe not. And so for sure, if we could have the plan, I mean, if in your survey and plans and specs that's included, and you set your elevation of your asphalt, you know, for that eventuality, but maybe the funding of that doesn't come for another year or two.
Sure.
You know, so I guess I would have the plan include all of it, and then maybe we could stage it out as funds allow, as the building of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to take a lot more work because, you know, as we do our design work, we're gonna have to almost incorporate the drainage alley, drainage of the alley anyway, so we can easily bid it as two different proposals. So again, if it comes in too high, you'd have the option of throwing out the alley, but yet the grades for the pavement then would be set up for that future concrete work.
I guess I'd love to see that. And then, like you say, cost-wise, maybe you can do it all, maybe not.
Right.
Tim?
I know this is an issue that's been brought up at every senior center board meeting that we have. They're quite concerned that we need to get this done, and I said, we're working on it. It's just we have to have the right plan in place.
Clarence?
Thank you. You're planning to drain that whole parking lot to the alley and then out, instead of draining it to Reinhardt?
No, I think a lot of that parking lot right now, it's almost intended to kind of, it drains from the building north, and then I think a lot of it's supposed to go to Reinhardt. Some of the things I would see maybe at the end there, at the end of the parking lot, maybe you put in the curb and gutter section, so the water hits the curb and gutter and then flows to Reinhardt or the alley. But I think a lot of that flow clearance, right off the top of my head, I think a lot of it's going to still go to Reinhardt.
Okay. So once we get it graded right and draining right, that may solve the alley issue in and of itself without doing anything to the alley.
Well, I mean, you still even, I mean, we're going to have to do something. That alley is
Yeah,
just
there-
really out of shape. And
Some people have tried to solve their own problems back
Yeah.
there, like in the dark of the night. There's been
Yeah.
yards of dirt dumped behind fences, and, I mean, if you go back there and look, it's rather interesting, so, that's all, sorry.
I mean, if we had some drainage plan for the city too, I mean, with a blade and stuff, maybe they could do something there, but right now, like I said, it's a mess, and I think that we just need to kind of come up with an overall drainage plan for back there.
Mike?
I've no quarrel with fixing the drainage and the paving of that lot for the senior center, but I had real concern when we start talking about paving alleys. And I guess I want to know what makes this alley special. There's a lot of sloppy alleys that don't drain well in town because we live in the bottom of a temporarily dry lake. And especially in the spring when the frost is coming out, these alleys around town are terrible. They just are. I got one right behind my office that's awful. And I'll be darned if I'm going to pay a special assessment for a concrete alley. I'm not. And we don't have the money to maintain our streets up to the standards we like. So when we start talking about paving alleys, I get a little bit nervous.
Carla?
Let me just check in, if we want, timeline, you think we can get this survey together, just so that it could be part of the budget process? We can do it like in the next month or something, so it could be increasing a little copy and then find a little bit better with it, so to make sure we get that.
Yeah, we could, I mean, within the next month, we could, get survey work done, probably come up with some preliminary cost estimates. We won't get the full design done, but yeah, we could come up with some preliminary cost estimates.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
And then, I don't know what you guys thought were on, doing some borings through that park lot, again, just so we know what we're dealing with and have no surprises. And again, I'm estimating right now 1,500 to 2,000.
Okay.
Do you feel from an engineering standpoint, for you to make a good judgment on anything regarding that paving of that lot, do you need the borings?
Yep. It's nice to know how much, because the problem we got is if we tell the contractor to go in there and mill off 2 inches, and all of a sudden ease into the gravel, we got some potential issues, so it's nice to know front.
Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Number 3, request to hire senior center coordinator. Mr. Repel.
Reed asked me to pick this up for him. We completed interviews for our new director position over there. We selected a gal by the name of Judy DeVal. Tentatively, she would like to start like October 30th. We had 4 really good candidates. It was close. She had just a little bit more experience working with the elderly. HR has got to do their thing on her first, but we'd like to we're bringing it to the council so that you're aware of the fact and that we can inform the mayor on it, so you guys can vote on it and let us know if it's okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Say we should move it on.
Last day. Linda's gonna try to stay on a couple days a week to bring her into what's been going on at the center. And we figure that could be a month maybe, that she'll work with her like that, maybe 2. But it'll be strictly on a part-time basis.
Mark?
I think, you want to bring the next person in, but it's always been my theory is, when you hire someone for a year for the job, let them go, because we don't want this to become, it should just be this, not that I don't want them to stick around, because I think we should work to show them that time up and make it a good, person, either own, either.
That'd be up to the board. So.
We're going to move number 4 to discontinue parking ticket program. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a repeat of a request for council action that I brought to you folks last year. As you may recall, we modeled this program after one that's been done in Stillwater for a number of years. Essentially, we chose the month of December last year for a variety of reasons, but during the course of that month, anyone that receives either a street maintenance ticket or a snow emergency ticket could essentially pay for that ticket through a donation of either food or a monetary donation to the East Grand Forks Food Shelf. Works a couple different benefits from our perspective. Obviously, the food shelf and our needy citizens benefit from any donations that wind up going to the food shelf. And for us, it allows us a little bit more painless way of reminding our citizens, our community members, about our need for them to be parking properly in the winter. We really need, obviously, for our staff, fire department, ambulance crews, to be able to get around the town. We need to have a public works to be able to effectively clean our streets. And so we always are trying to do those reminders early on, and this is kind of a little bit more gentle way of letting folks know, hey, you gotta get your vehicles off the street. And so it essentially gives us an ability to give folks a warning for that month period. And at the same time, obviously providing a good cost or a good addition to the food shelf.
I'd say move it on.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Chief today?
Just on an added note, last year we did collect a grand total of about 440 pounds of food, so there was a fairly significant amount of food was collected.
Great program. Thank you, sir.
I would just want to make one other comment. If you've been reading the newspapers, the staff of our chief has been very, very busy.
And they have been busy, yes. Folks are doing a good job.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Number 6, update on developer agreement. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Council President. This was brought forward to the work session previously a couple of times for discussion and referral. Last time we brought it forward, City Attorney Galstead had some questions and suggestions for some of the wording in the document. So we were advised to go back, meet with the city attorney and work those issues out as far as the wording, make sure that's agreeable for both staff and the city attorney. I believe we have done that. And we believe that we have a document that protects the city to the greatest degree possible, but that is still fair to the developers. It's kind of hard to make it too hard one way or the other, but we believe that we have a good working document that will protect us from some of the situations that we've experienced in the past. So we'll take any questions.
Anybody have anything for Mr. Murphy? See none? Thank you, sir. Number 7, discussion on proposed garbage sale ordinance. Garage sale. Garbage sale. Sorry. You want to talk, Megan? Are you sure?
In the packet, I did a draft of an ordinance. It is not in our ordinance form specifically. before moving forward with that, I wanted to make sure this is something you guys wanted to move forward with, so I did not have Ron put it in ordinance form. But as you see, it's going off of the 2 ordinances that I had received from the League of Minnesota Cities, kind of pulling stuff from each of them. It also included a permit process in order to track things better. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but when somebody would want to, or what I'm suggesting at this time is if somebody wanted to have a garage sale, all they would have to do is call the administration office, let us know the dates that they were going to do it. We already have a basic template that we use for special event permits. We would use the same one, send it out, and then they would be allowed, I believe at this time, up to 4, and I think that would allow them to go up to 3 days under what is being suggested. And I would like input from you guys. Is this, first of all, something you want to do? Second of all, if it is, are there any changes you would like to see on this? And I do believe we also have a resident here who might have some input on this as well. So we'll go from there.
Question I do have is, so let's say there's 4 you're allowed a year, and they have a 3-day garage sale. Is that 3 then, and you're only left with 1, or is that 1 incident?
I think we have to define it a little bit, but I think it's 3 weekends if they wanted to do it.
Or weekends,
I
yep.
just want to make sure that.
Or, excuse me, 4 weekends, 3 days. So it's 12 days.
Do you have any comments, sir? I know that. Okay, if you want to come up and state your name and your address, my mark there.
Mel Hoverson. I live at 428 8th Street Northwest, a block away over here. I read through the proposal, and the way that it's written and the way that it's worded, you could still have 4 3-day rummage sales in 4 weekends, which would be a month. That's a quarter of the summer. These people could still have a month of rummage sales. I would like to suggest 2 3-day rummage sales, 1 in the first half of the year, 1 in the second half of the year. So there'd be a spring sale and a fall sale, depending on when they wanted it, but that way they couldn't run it for a month.
To coincide with the fall.
But
There was-
similar.
The Little Fork one did have a 30-day separation, which I had circled also. The G item there on Little Fork calls for no more than 2 consecutive sales within 30 days between all others. And so you could have, by that provision right there, it would separate them out a little bit more.
Mr. Vetter.
Thank you. I'm just wondering that it seems like there's 1 or 2 problem individuals in our community, and I'm wondering if there's anything in our current statutes that can address this without having a garage sale statute.
Murphy, you have the answer to that, sir?
Yeah, I can answer that. And one of the problem ones we have, the answer is yes. The way they are operating right now, they actually meet the definition of a secondhand dealer, which is specifically prohibited from the residential areas. So we're dealing it through that aspect. So unless they meet, as far as I am aware, unless they meet that criteria, the garage sales, that's the only other area in the ordinance that I can see that I'm aware of that deals with this is if they cross the line to a secondhand dealer. And there are some fairly strict standards to get to that as far as what they have, what they need to qualify as a secondhand dealer. So I guess to answer the question, one of the problem properties, yes. The other one, not that I'm aware of, not that I can see, no.
Mr. Gelston.
I'm thinking the other thing that you could possibly do is just expand the exception, or expand or more define the exception in the secondhand dealership portion of that ordinance, where right now it says occasionally selling household goods. You could expand that as a definite, as an exception to the secondhand dealership. But what's happen right now is normally you don't have a problem, and then you'll have somebody that pushes the envelope to the point where it becomes a problem. And if that's the case, then do you want to just specifically define it so that you know exactly, so everybody's on the same page and understands when and how they can conduct a garage sale. I think it's, primarily a garage sale is, I take personal items that for my own use, and now I need to either discard them, throw them away, give them to the boys ranch, or I sell them. It's not bringing in inventory and selling it out of your house. So there's a kind of a difference.
I guess I am concerned that we're overreacting to a problem that isn't that big. We have two extremes here. One, we have a property that's going extremely overboard when it comes to defining the definition of a garage sale. It is clearly a secondhand store, thrift store, call it what you'd like. The other thing I think is it's extremely rare that we have this problem. And we've had two complaints, this one and another one, that I know of. And I don't want to punish the hundreds of people that have rummage sales and force them to come to the city hall or call to get a permit, Captain May I, to have a garage sale. It's really, I think it's overreacting to a small problem that can be dealt with by enforcement. And if we get a complaint about a neighbor who's having too many garage sales that exceed the definition of a garage sale, then we deal with that. We enforce it. We enforce it like we did the other property with the junk-filled backyard. That problem's been solved. And I don't think you need to rewrite the rule book just because you have a couple of isolated incidents. And this one is a bad one. The one that David is referring to is way over the top. It's been all summer long this has been going on, and we should have dealt with it sooner than this, but I will not support a permit for garage sales. I won't, because I think it's asking people that, obey the rules and just have one or two garage sales a year, having to come to City Hall and get a permit. If there's a problem, we'll get a complaint. We deal with it. We get a letter from our attorney, send the police over, let them know they're violating the ordinance, they're not being very good neighbors, and we deal with it that way.
Mr. Grasso?
So how fast, if we go with that scenario, how fast does that have to happen? I mean, if this has been going on all summer and we've known about it, and we're not doing anything about it, how long is that going to take? I mean, it took us quite a bit of time to clean up the last one we just had. I mean, are we going to be able to expedite the process faster so that people don't have to put up with this on a weekend basis? Because, if I'm the guy that's doing it, I can get 5 in before we get the paperwork done.
See, I'm afraid if we go with our current ordinance from a secondhand junk dealer, the burden of proof falls on us to prove where their merchandise came from. If we're going to fall back and say, well, you're a retailer, you're buying goods at wholesale and reselling at retail, the burden of proof lies on us to say, we can show that you bought these goods to resell them. But if we come back with something more like this, we have a much cleaner way to say you either comply or you don't. If we want to do something like this without a permit and wait for the complaint and then turn around and enforce this, I'd be receptive to that. If we don't want to have the permitting process, but we still have a rummage sale ordinance that it only triggers when you get the complaint, and then you send the police over once and then twice and then 3 times, and that's that. You could enforce it. It'd be a little harder. But if you're concerned about a permitting process, to all those that in good faith have one rummage sale every 2 or 3 years, I'd be very receptive to that.
Mike?
My response is, how many complaints have we had before this year?
When did this start that you know of?
This one was this summer. We had one 2 years ago. She moved out because there were enough complaints. Police went over there and they shut her down. Because she was buying stuff, hauling it home, having her sale all week long.
The question I have is, before she got the letter, beginning of this week, with who from the city talked to her? No one reached. Location. So I'd like to have this information and have it out there. I don't think we need. That's, then we can enforce it, the permit process. That'd be my preference, but.
So are you, whoops, I'm sorry, are you saying we're gonna lay out specific dates then, like specific days? So a certain amount of time, then this happens?
It would end up being an ordinance very similar to
Similar to
this,
this? Okay,
minus
that's-
the permit.
Okay.
If the problem was brought forward by somebody, residents, and no one talked to them in the first place, okay? Someone got reached out, you came to somebody, council person, never talked to them, and it got to this point, that's the problem. So that's why we're sitting here looking at this stuff, because it wasn't talked to. So either we do this or we don't do this. Simple as that. We talk to these people, or not talk to these people.
I'll respond to that. I think the reason no one went to them is because when this first came to us, we said, hey, our ordinance is too vague, let's work on the ordinance. And no one wanted to go to them with a vague ordinance. Now we're here with a updated ordinance that takes care of that. So yeah, I would agree. Someone should have went over there 6 weeks ago, said, hey, you shouldn't be doing this.
I don't know, if we want to do like certain dates on this, I think what we need to do is get to Megan and tell her, you know, we can't do, you can have 2 in 30 days or whatever it may be. If you want to email those or drop those off or talk to her personally, please do that. Then we bring it back and talk about it and move it on for a vote. If people want to vote for it, yes, go ahead and vote. If people want to vote for it, but no. That's all we got to do.
I sure like these points with the addition of G or some variation of that. I think that covers it nicely.
Okay. Henry?
I'd like to make some comments. That thing wasn't a typical garage sale. It's a garbage pit, what they were doing. Now, we've got the same thing on the west side of 220, the business section, and everybody should drive up there. We shouldn't tolerate that. A garage sale is fine. But we're sitting here and we haven't done what we should have. Now, if you want to depreciate property values, you let conditions like that and what we have up in the north end continue. I'm not going to sit here and keep my mouth shut because be nice about it. We want a clean city. What are we spending money for? We're cleaning streets. We're doing things to make the city attractive. And I don't care who they are. They can be related to the governor. They live like citizens should live here. We're not a second-class city. And when we permit it, I said it's a bad thing. And I wouldn't want them to come up next to my house. Why, my neighbors would throw me over the dike and in the river. They wouldn't tolerate it. We shouldn't tolerate it.
Mr. Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I'm a little bit up in the air. I really don't think, I agree with the idea that this is kind of using a little bit of a sledgehammer to pound in a finished nail to some extent. But we also want to define what is legitimate. I think definition is the biggest part to enforcement, whether it's now or down the line. So we have to clearly define what these things are before we move on from that. And I guess just thinking about the bigger picture again is, you know, we are facing with the internet and all those type of things a different age of what's going to be. I mean, we've always had people working from their homes, selling things out of their homes and stuff like that. But you've got Craigslist and another, 10, 20 different ways that people are selling items out of their homes. And I don't think we want to cut down on that, but on the other hand, these could become the same type of intrusions into residential areas that we don't want either. We don't want high traffic. But I also don't think we want to stop people from being able to sell things on Craigslist either. So looking for narrow definitions of what is allowed in that garage sale type of environment, I don't have a problem with. I don't see us having to have people call in. I just don't. It just, for one, I don't think people will do it. I just don't. Like dog license. I don't. If the one pet peeve I do have on all this, I mean, I drive by the property in question every single day, at least twice, and it should be downtown with the storefront and all that. I mean, it's kind of like the definition of pornography. You see it, you know it when you see it. That's a store. That's a retail store, and everybody knows it. But outside of that, the other pet peeve I have is it seems like we've kind of started accumulating signs everywhere. We've got signs up and down Bigland Road for sales that aren't even East Grand Forks. I would be happy if, Jason's not here yet. If you want to take the blade by and just start taking those out anytime, I think that'd be all right. I guess that's more that would be the only place I'd like to see have a permit, because if you have someone pull a permit and they say, yeah, we're going to put a sign, you have who's putting the sign up and where, I guess. But other than that, I don't really foresee going down the permit avenue, at least right now. But I think if you get the definition items lined up and get those squared away, I think that's always the next step. And it's really an easier step once you have people understanding what they can do. So, thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
I'm just going to say, I can get together with Megan here in the next couple of weeks, have this thing ironed out and back to you.
Wonderful.
I think we've got a lot of feedback here, and we'll be able to handle that. She's done a good job to this point. We'll just tweak it a little bit.
Anything from anybody else? If not,
Move.
Second by Pachivinsky. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.
Putting that extra gravel down on that road on White. The washboard is now gone.
Hey, you did a good job. It's nice there driving up North 4th Street. Excellent.
Well, they're digging now.
No, I'm going to give it to her. My view.